Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the annual campaign chair, Jonathan Leipzig.
Shalom Haverim. I'm joking, I'll take it off for this moment. There are two roads diverged in a wood, and we took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference. Good evening, Shalom. My name is Jonathan Leipzig, and I'm deeply honored to be your Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver campaign chair for the third year in a row. Those words I shared with you are, of course, not mine. They're Robert Frost's, but hopefully you'll understand why I shared them with you. Before I get started, I wanted to thank BMO for 15 years of sponsorship. That's truly staggering and remarkable. Yasher koach, kol hakavod, and toda rabah. Sadly, I'm standing before you as this campaign chair via video rather than in person, launching the most important campaign in the history of Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver. We gather together virtually in the shadow of our Hagim, in the shadow of the days of awe, separated by a virus that has torn us apart in ways that I've personally and many of us have never experienced. This year has been, to put it mildly, an incredibly challenging year. One, frankly, beyond my blessed human experience. A year of emotional, physical, and to a large extent, spiritual separation. A year of terrible loss. For many in our broader Jewish community, many in Am Yisrael, they're suffering in ways that I haven't witnessed, again, in my blessed memory. Many of us are struggling to make ends meet, having lost our businesses or our jobs. Many among us have lost loved ones, either near or far. Our families are separated. Needless to say, COVID has left us facing incredible challenges. Here in the Lower Mainland alone, it's said that in 2021, 20% of Jewish people within broader Vancouver will be living below the poverty line. That is both humbling and staggering. To imagine that here in 2021 we would have 1 in 5 of our community members living below the poverty line is overwhelming. The food insecurity is at its highest level in Vancouver in decades, not just in the Jewish community, but more broadly. Our brothers and sisters in our partner region in the north of Israel and the far reaches of Siberia are facing overwhelming challenges, whether it's the increasing degree of poverty within the north of Israel or the terror threats on Israel's northern border, to deepening social isolation for the many elderly who remain in Eastern Europe. So as I stand before you, some in the broader Canadian and Vancouver community would suggest that these challenges are unprecedented. But I would posit to you that while challenging and while overwhelming or seemingly overwhelming, these are by no means unprecedented challenges. We gather here this year to celebrate Rosh Hashanah as a community and a people and reflect, if we reflect on the 140 generations since we came together as a people at the foot of Sinai. We, the Jewish people, know that while these are real challenges, they are not unprecedented. We, the Jewish people, have sadly faced a litany of existential challenges over the millennia. We have done the unthinkable and returned from forced exile 3 times to our ancestral homeland, something no other ancient people have done. As Rabbi Sachs recently shared with the House of Commons in London, the last 1,000 years of Jewish history in Europe was so full of challenges so profound and unprecedented, that it added words to our collective English vocabulary. Words that I need not remind you of, but I will. Forced conversion, expulsion, inquisition, pogrom, Shoah. These unthinkable challenges, not to mention the existential struggle that our family in Medinat Yisrael have faced consistently since its rebirth, these have been consistently met by we, the Jewish people, and overcome. For we, the Jewish people, have met every single challenge head-on and moved from strength to strength. As Mark Twain once wrote in his marvel at the perseverance and the longevity of Jewish peoplehood, the Jewish people saw them all, survived them all, and is now what she, or he, always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of her parts, no dulling of her alert mind, All things are mortal but the Jew. All forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of her immortality? Well, I don't have a lot of answers, but to me, at least in my opinion, our immortality comes from our commitment to follow the path less traveled. The path laid out to us by Moses at the foot of Sinai. A path built on a constant drive and commandment to remember, and a responsibility for the collective. Moses told us some 3,500 years ago that we should never forget that moment. And that message has been passed on through generations, 140 of them, from our mothers, from generation to generation. So now as we gather together in the shadow of the Hagim, some 3,500 years, we have been constantly reminded to never forget our responsibility to nurture and protect our beautiful Jewish inheritance, our traditions, our community, our text, and our faith. To never forget the suffering we felt in bondage and therein, and as a result, never turn a blind eye to the suffering of anyone else, in our community or beyond. We have also lived consistently from generation to generation from the Talmudic time, according to the words of the Talmud, Klal Yisrael Aravim Ze Bazeh. All of Israel is a guarantor for one another. When you support our community, when you support our Federation campaign, when you get out and volunteer, you are living in accordance to those Talmudic words. And through that life, you give we the Jewish people and set an example towards immortality. Because it's this sense of collective responsibility for all of Am Yisrael and to perform acts of loving kindness and chesed and tzedakah that I think has allowed us to survive the truly unthinkable, the truly unprecedented. So as many wonder how they will manage this incredible challenge, I would say that we, the Jewish people, should step forward and set the example. We have the blueprint. I have no doubt that we can overcome the challenges we face with COVID. But to do so, we cannot forget the path that we were told to follow. We need to double down our commitment to our community and to Klal Yisrael. We need to get out and volunteer. We need to visit the aged. We need to care for those less fortunate. And those of us that can give, we need to give more than we ever have to stabilize and strengthen our Jewish community. For we, the Jewish people, need to do what we have always done, and that is to come together. And if we do, with tremendous clarity and resolve, we will move forward from strength to strength. So I want to wish you all Shana Tova, and may the coming year bring true health, happiness, and that which we all yearn for, of course, true, everlasting, meaningful peace for all of Israel and all the children of the world. Now, I'm going to turn over to my dear friend, Alex Crystal, who's the board chair of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver. Alex really defines the word mensch. His heart is bigger than himself, and he's really led by example. It's a real privilege to be introducing Alex tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. I just want to highlight what John said. It's his third year being campaign chair, which normally it's a 2-year commitment, in probably one of the most challenging and time-consuming jobs. So that's a testament to his character and his commitment to our community. So thank you for all you do, Jonathan. It's much appreciated by all of us. Good evening, everyone. I'm so proud to address you tonight on behalf of the Jewish Federation Board of Directors. Vancouver, all of Canada, has been hit hard by COVID. Our local Jewish community is feeling no different. It's been a real challenge, and it's a concern. The worry for me is people pulling back and becoming disengaged in the Jewish community or in Jewish life. But we won't let that happen. We are all up to the challenge. We've already seen our partnership agencies rise to the challenge by immediately responding to the needs of their constituents as soon as COVID hit. Our donors have risen to the challenge with such willing acts of generosity like I've never seen before. And the volunteers throughout our community have been up to any task that has been put up to them. So yes, this is a challenge, but we are up to it. And I guarantee we will be a stronger and more cohesive community for having gone through it. While we are here to launch the annual campaign, I want to tell you more about the full scope of Jewish Federation's approach to community recovery. which has galvanized our roles as the community's central convening, planning, and fundraising organization. From day one of the shutdown, our community affairs team brought 14 groups of organizations together to assess their needs and to foster collaboration. From there, we quickly released more than $500,000 to make sure people could get the help they urgently needed from our partners. These funds helped the JCC offer programming online and helped Jewish Family Services launch their community care and deliver more meals and groceries to those in need. Synagogues were able to offer Hebrew school online. Tikva Housing was able to provide rental subsidies to the families that needed it. The Jewish Seniors Alliance was able to provide additional support to isolated seniors. And our overnight camps knew there were financial resources available so they could come up with alternative programming over the summer. Our partners make sure every penny they receive goes to helping people. So it was up to us to step up and provide emergency funding. But that was only the first step. At the same time, we worked closely with our major donors, and they stepped up in a big way. They renewed their annual campaign commitments early and pledged to maintain their commitments for 2 years. Many of them also increased their annual giving and made additional commitments to the Community Recovery Fund. We are deeply grateful for the trust and support they and you have put in us. Next, we drew upon our community planning expertise and established the Community Recovery Task Force, chaired by Risa Levine. The task force is comprised of some of the most well-respected and experienced leaders in our community, and you'll hear more about their work from Risa later this evening. Another strategic component of our recovery effort is the work of the Jewish Community Foundation, our community's rock, which is uniquely positioned to see our community through uncertain times like these. Fund holders have turned to the foundation for guidance about how to best support the community recovery. And through their endowment funds, fund holders have distributed more than $500,000 to support increased needs in the areas of food security, senior services, and much more. Foundation staff and leadership are working closely with the task force and will ensure that fund holders continue to receive the very best counsel from the foundation about how to make the biggest possible impact in our community. So that brings us to the annual campaign, really the lifeblood of this community, which annually gives each of us a big opportunity to help. It's our job to take care of each other. As I said, our community is being tested, but I know we will respond and come together to make sure our community stays strong and flourishes moving forward. And Jewish Federation, along with our partner agencies, will be here to lead the way. I want to wish everyone a sweet and happy New Year. Shana Tova.
When COVID-19 hit, our community's needs multiplied exponentially. Our partner agencies were hit like never before. Demand for their support went up at a time when they, too, were vulnerable. More than ever, people are relying on our partners, and they rely on us. In this crisis, our partners went from serving 600 meals every second week to serving 1,300 meals every single week. That means demand went up fourfold. This crisis is far from over. Its impact on vulnerable members of our community will be felt for an untold length of time. In 2021, the percentage of Jewish people in Metro Vancouver living in poverty is expected to rise to more than 18%. For many who have been hit hardest, there is a real risk of losing their homes. The experience of isolation and quarantine reinforce the importance of connection. Many understand it differently now. Still, countless seniors remain isolated. For some, their food delivery volunteer is the only person they see in a week. This has major implications on mental health, and not just for seniors. Children whose parents may no longer be able to afford day school tuition risk being uprooted from their school community. It all adds up. We need to keep our community connected, and we need to keep our partners thriving. When you give through Jewish Federation, you give to every need in our community. The time to act is now. COVID-19 has ripped through our community at every imaginable and unimaginable level. Educational institutions, seniors programs and vital services, community centers, food security, cultural institutions, summer camps, and counseling and anti-poverty initiatives. Nothing has been spared. And our efforts to counter this depend on you. A seismic shift calls for an unprecedented response. Give today at jewishvancouver.com.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to the team from Federation for putting together such a compelling video montage. As you can see, this year is really different. Individuals, families, children, and seniors are being affected. Our partner agencies who serve them are being affected in ways that we couldn't have previously imagined. I want to thank Alex, not only for what he's done tonight, but this entire year. His leadership as the board chair of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver has really been tremendous. And we are all deeply grateful for your contributions and effort, Alex. One of the key ways that, of course, Federation is helping address these issues as it relates to this seismic impact on our community and the way that COVID is affecting our broader Jewish community here and afar is really with our Community Recovery Task Force. I was asked to introduce Risa Levine. I've met Risa on a couple of occasions, but I asked for a bio so that I could introduce her properly. Unfortunately, they gave me a bio and they said, it's only an hour, Jonathan. I don't think you'll have enough time to cover all that she's done for Greater Vancouver, for Canada, and for all of Am Yisrael. We're deeply honored to have Risa, though, as our Community Task Force Chair, and I'll hand over the microphone to Risa now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan, and good evening, everyone. As chair of the Community Recovery Task Force, I'm here to update you on our work and what we have learned so far. The role of the task force is to look at the bigger, longer-term picture of our community's future in a strategic and holistic manner. Due to COVID, as you've heard, many more vulnerable people have turned to our frontline organizations to meet their needs. But these organizations are vulnerable too. The task force is committed to find ways to strengthen these agencies and protect the programs and services they provide. Part of what makes our community robust and strong is the diversity of programs available to ensure that community members are able to participate fully in all that our community has to offer and to stay connected. The work of the task force is complex, but we are starting with two very simple acts: meeting with the partner agencies and listening to what they have to say. One emerging issue we have heard about is the need for robust technology and tech support, so organizations can function effectively in what for many is an entirely new reality. Another issue that agencies are grappling with is how to support their staff to deliver programs and services in sometimes radically new and unfamiliar ways. Our partners have done magnificent work in adapting their programs and services, but addressing these deeper, more existential challenges will affect what the future holds for our most cherished and important community organizations. We met last week with an organization whose research shows that 25% of BC's not-for-profits may have to close their doors. Thankfully, the situation for Federation's partners was mitigated somewhat by the role the local allocations committee played in maintaining allocations to all of Jewish Federation's partners this year. Having an organization like Federation to provide some financial predictability, in addition to its vital convening and community planning roles, has been crucial. Most communities don't have the benefit of that. While ultimately the task force will be involved in determining how community recovery funds are distributed, our role is very different from the important work done through Jewish Federation's allocation process. Our focus will be on making strategic decisions about where to direct the funding to ensure that our Jewish community remains healthy and vibrant. We are too early in the process to tell you what things will look like at the end of the day, but we do know two things. First, our community is bound to look different than it does now. And second, we've brought together the most dedicated group of experienced community leaders in recent history to work through this immense challenge, and we are committed to do it. Thank you.
My name is Sue Hector, and I am the co-chair for Women's Philanthropy for this year's campaign.
My name is Shauna Merker, and I am the co-chair for Women's Philanthropy for this year.
What is a woman's role in philanthropy? Some women give on their own, and some as part of their family. In most of the family situations, it is the woman who drives that family's donations and the time that family spends helping others. I am proud to be one of those women who has helped my family become more philanthropic. I am inspired by a long line of female Federation volunteers. I follow in their footsteps, and I inspire other women to do the same. There are many in our community who need a little help every once in a while, and we believe it is our duty to help everyone. Tikkun Olam, heal the world and leave it a better place than when you arrived. It is the core of what we do. I've been involved with many other Jewish organizations, from JNF to Talmud Torah. And the one thing I've learned is that community is the most important thing we can have. Community is what makes our day schools home for our children. Community is what makes kids go back to camp summer after summer. Community is why I do the work that I do. We stand stronger as a Jewish community when we all work together. Jewish values teach us that it's a mitzvah to give tzedakah. This year, tzedakah is needed more than ever. Families and individuals will have a hard time making ends meet. It is our duty to make sure that everyone has food on their tables, everyone has a roof over their head, and every child has a seat in a day school. When your Federation canvasser calls you, do what you can to do your best. You can make the community stronger. We are all stronger when we work together.
The importance of the Jewish values we all share is what inspired Sarah Hurwitz to write her book, Here All Along, Finding Meaning, Spirituality, and a Deeper Connection to Life in Judaism, after finally choosing to look there. We are delighted that she is joining us live tonight for a quick Q&A. She is a graduate of Harvard, a former White House speechwriter, and now an author. She is incredibly accomplished, but despite the astounding success in her career, she felt as though something was missing. So she went looking for it. Where did she find it? Right here in Judaism, in Jewish life, in Jewish thought, and in Jewish tradition. The Jewish values and concepts in which Sarah found meaning are the same ones that drive us, that drive many of you, and they are the values that are at the very heart of our community. Sarah, we are delighted to have you this evening for a Q&A. In your book, you wrote about how inspired you are by core values and concepts of Judaism. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
First of all, thank you so much for having me tonight. It is an honor to be with all of you. And yeah, it's funny, when I first started learning about Judaism, which was not until my mid-30s, I was blown away by how much deeper the values were than the values I was seeing in just the modern secular world. I think you could say that the ethic of the modern secular world is something to the effect of do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt other people too much, which is kind of a low ethical bar. But in Judaism, I found this core animating idea that we are all created in the image of God. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, you can still see the power of that idea, which means, as a rabbi named Yitz Greenberg put it so beautifully, it means that each of us is infinitely worthy. You can't put a value on any of our lives. The value is infinite. It means that we're all equal to each other. No one is any better or worse than anyone else. And it means that we're all fundamentally unique. There is no one else like us on this planet. And you could say, well, of course, Sarah, everyone thinks that. That's not particularly earth-shattering. But that's not true. Actually, none of us really deep down inside believe this. And, an example is when I think all of us have had the experience when we've walked by someone on the street who says, hey, can you help me? Can you spare $1? And maybe we've helped out. Or maybe we've just said, I'm sorry, not today, sir. And we've kept walking. But if that person had been a celebrity, someone really famous we've seen on TV or in the movies, we'd probably stop. We'd probably say, oh, yes, of course, I can help you. I'd love to meet you. Can I get your autograph? Fundamentally, we actually don't think that people are all infinitely worthy or totally equal or fundamentally unique. We value people differently based on their wealth, their fame, their status, their likes and retweets. And I think Judaism has this idea at the core of our tradition that each of us is sacred. I found that to be tremendously powerful.
Helping those who are struggling is a core Jewish value, but it's also a core value in many other religions and non-religious traditions. So what makes the Jewish approach to tzedakah so unique and so powerful?
I think it actually starts with the very meaning of the word tzedakah. This word is often mistranslated to mean charity, but as many of you I'm sure know, it actually means justice. And that's important because charity is something that you give from the kindness of your heart when you feel like it, if you feel like it, whereas justice is something that's not optional, right? We have fair procedures in a courtroom because justice demands it. Similarly, we give tzedakah for the same reason. You don't decide whether to keep the fair procedures in the courtroom based on how you feel. You do it always. And it's the same thing for tzedakah. And when I studied the laws around tzedakah, I was very moved because they don't just speak to how much we give, but how we give. The Jewish laws have this intense preoccupation with preserving the dignity of those to whom we give tzedakah. So Jewish law urges us to give in a way that's empowering, saying, giving a job or a loan is always best because that empowers people to go and then provide for themselves. And they say that actually even those who receive tzedakah also have to give tzedakah. And you might say, well, wait, that doesn't make sense. Why give tzedakah to someone only to have them give a little bit of it away? But the idea is that all of us should feel like we are empowered. None of us should feel like just a receiver. We should feel like a giver as well. Jewish law also tells us to be sure that we give in a way that doesn't embarrass or humiliate people. So it's best to give anonymously when you can. And there's even a Jewish law that I find so moving, which says that if you've given someone a loan and you know that they can't repay you at that time, try not to run into them on the street because to do so might embarrass them. It might stress them out. I think often about that old slander that says that Christianity is a religion of love, but Judaism is a religion of law. And when you study Jewish law, you realize what a lie that is. Because through our painstaking consideration of other people's needs and feelings and dignity in our law, we are showing love. Our laws reflect our profound love and respect for each other. So I think that our approach to tzedakah is incredibly powerful and valuable and quite unique.
Thank you so much for inspiring us, Sarah. Tzedakah, equaling justice, is something I think that speaks to us all. And your story about being present during a socially distant mourning really touched our hearts. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us tonight.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
Now, I'd like to welcome my good friend and a true woman of valor, Lana Pulver.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you so much, Sarah. I expect we have all had a moment in our lives when we've searched for meaning, and it was incredibly inspiring to hear how you found that sense of connection and meaning in Judaism. Good evening. I'm Lana Pulver, and it is my great privilege to be the incoming chair for the 2021 annual campaign. I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, Nigel Savage. Nigel and I share not just a background in the financial world and an entrepreneurial spirit, but a commitment to community. Nigel began his career as a professional fund manager in London, where he worked for NM Rothschild and was co-head of UK equities at Govett. And then, like all great trailblazers, he pivoted. Nigel followed his Jewish roots, knowing that at the very core of any strong and healthy community stands one thing: sustainability. He founded Hazon, the Jewish Lab for Sustainability, and for the past 2 decades has been looking at food and food security with a fresh approach. What intrigues us about his work is that it is wrapped in a Jewish context, and that it is consistent with the approach to food security that Jewish Federation and our partner, Jewish Family Services, have taken over the past several years. Together with JFS, we established the Food Security Task Force, chaired by Renee Katz and Stan Shaw, which laid out a new vision that would give more people more options to access nutritious food, while at the same time offering services in a holistic and coordinated manner while focusing on long-term sustainability. Thanks to funding from the Diamond Foundation and the Jewish Community Foundation, we engaged a food security consultant to develop an innovative plan of action. With the impact of COVID, this area of our work has become more important and more urgent than ever before. Local community organizations have gone from delivering 600 meals every other week to 1,300 every single week. Thankfully, due to the strong community connections of our partners JFS, Kehillah, Society of Richmond, and a number of synagogues, they were able to ramp up quickly. Sadly, with the increased isolation and financial impact that many community members are experiencing due to COVID, this increased need may become the new normal. Hearing from those outside our community who are leading in the areas of food security, sustainability, and innovation has been an important part of the process for Jewish Federation and JFS as we move toward a new food security model based on community engagement rather than a have-not approach. Nigel is someone whose perspective we have wanted to bring you for several years, and we are very pleased that he is joining us tonight. Welcome, Nigel.
Hi, Lana. Thank you so much for those kind words. I'm incredibly honored to be with you. I'm sad not to be in Vancouver itself, but genuinely honored to be with you. A huge thank you to Shelley Rivkin and her crew for making this happen, and to Jonathan, Alexa, Risa, Shauna, Sue, and you, Lana, for your great commitment and leadership. Thank you, Sarah Howitz, for speaking so beautifully. And finally, a big thank you to Ezra. You were a phenomenal leader in the Jewish community in New York, and it's really exciting to get a sense of what's happening in Vancouver. But most of all, at this strange moment, a big thank you to each of you, not merely for being on this call, but for being stakeholders in Vancouver Federation and the BC Jewish community. I'm genuinely inspired by the presentations I've heard this evening. We've learned many things these last 6 months, but one of them is about the power and the absolute necessity of strong central institutions. There are things that we can do as individuals and should do and must do, but some things only a government can do, and some things only a federation can do. What I want to talk about this evening is the unique opportunity that Vancouver Federation now has to address one of the greatest challenges of our era, and to do so in a way that strengthens Jewish life in very significant ways. I want to start by sharing, rather ironically, something I said at a big gathering I was keynoting in Seattle early this year. I've been thinking, I said, about the definition of the optimist and the pessimist. The pessimist says, oh, I just don't see how things could possibly get any worse. And the optimist says, oh, I think I can. Well, that was late January. And as we know, just a few weeks later, things did indeed get far worse than we ever imagined. And yet I want to distinguish between optimism, the expectation that things will get better, and hope, the vision that things could get better if we can imagine the future we believe in and then work to bring it to fruition. This is a very deeply Jewish idea. The questions we must face right now as human beings and as Jewish leaders relate to this. How do we cope with the scale of the challenges we face? How do we not get overwhelmed? Is there a way to address multiple challenges simultaneously? And how do we balance external crises and internal Jewish needs? And that's why I want to turn, of all things, to the climate crisis. On the face of it, it's just too much for us to begin to think about. We already have COVID, social services, people in need, smoke rising north from California, a whole range of challenges. But actually, the climate crisis stands under and in front of everything we're dealing with now. It is abundantly clear that we are changing the world's climate, and it's abundantly clear that it's contributing to human suffering. Hurricanes, fires, Syrian refugees. And worst of all, it's absolutely clear that the next 10 to 15 years will be critical to the future of the world. We owe it to our kids and our grandkids to do all that we can to make a difference. And that's why I'm here this evening. Chazon is catalyzing change across North America. We're seeing incredible things start to happen. Coastal Roots Farm in Southern California, Urban Adamah and Wilderness Torah in the Bay Area, the Jewish Educational Farm at the new JCC in Boulder, Colorado, Shoresh in Toronto, a range of projects Chazon is involved in on the East Coast and Detroit and elsewhere. And we're here to help, including to pitch in Vancouver in the future if we can be of use. What we're seeing is that when the Jewish community raises its game to start to address sustainability, good things happen. I want to suggest that the process for driving change actually starts with the Jewish calendar. We know that it's Rosh Hashanah next week, and we know, and obviously, that Rosh Hashanah is different from Hanukkah. Purim is different from Pesach. Marking the uniqueness of the calendar is so central to Jewish life that we just take it for granted. But did you know that as well as distinguishing the days and the seasons, we also distinguish years? A year from now, it will be the start of the Shemitah year in Jewish life, the sabbatical year. Shemitah is an amazing concept. It's about allowing land to lie fallow, raising questions of how we treat the world, how we treat each other, how we relate to the poorest in our communities, how we reduce debt and inequality. Separately from anything else, it will be worth spending some of the coming year learning about Shemitah. But even more so, this gift of the calendar actually helps us to frame and to address the climate crisis. The gift I want to offer you this evening is this. How will we use the whole 2 years from now until September 2022 to really plan for the next full Shemitah cycle in Jewish life, which runs from 2022 to 2029. That's far enough out to imagine extraordinary change and time enough also to implement it. What would it look like to develop a 7-year plan that envisions a Vancouver Jewish community that by 2029 is absolutely cutting edge in relation to environmental sustainability? Looking at the power you use in your buildings, green roofs, bicycle parking, thinking about the food that you serve. How are the workers treated? How is the land treated? How are the animals treated? Do you grow any food? Do you compost it? Do you serve pop? Why or why not? Do you serve meat? Why or why not? And how do we involve our kids? What do we serve at bar and bat mitzvahs, at weddings? What about the interfaith piece? What about our neighbors? What about food security and environmental policy in BC and in Canada as a whole? What about connecting to the environmental movement in Israel and a new generation of Israelis and Palestinians whose shared commitment to the environment is also helping to build peace? All of this is totally doable. It just needs time and vision and some determination. And as a Jewish community, we're actually good at all three. I learned a few years ago from a friend of mine, Anna Hanau, whose parents live on Vancouver Island, this amazing line. You know you're on the right track, she said, when your solution to one problem solves a bunch of others. And so what I want to tell you is lean into this moment. Lean in not only to the short-term challenges, but also to the greatest challenge of our era, the climate crisis. We literally can't solve it by ourselves, not any one of us, or even a single organization or community. But if we do it together, if we use the next 2 years to learn and brainstorm and start to flesh out a vision for the Vancouver Jewish community in 2029, then you will strengthen Jewish life in Vancouver in immeasurable ways. You will strengthen Federation itself and your local Jewish organizations. You'll fire up many of the people already involved in Jewish life. You'll bring new people through the door. You'll strengthen relationships with Catholics and Muslims and all the different ethnic and religious groups in Vancouver. You will have walked the walk for your kids and your grandkids and those who come after us. And maybe most of all, you'll be able to look yourself in the mirror and actually feel better about yourself in the face of these dark clouds for having really started to make a difference. So I'll end with this. The word chazon means vision. The Jewish New Year is always about vision. It's always about tshuva in the positive sense, striving to return to a vision of our best selves. So I want to bless you and me and all of us that this should be a year of health and peace and goodness. May we be blessed to do the work genuinely to create a stronger Jewish community and a healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable world for everybody. Shana Tova.
I want to thank Nigel. I want to thank Sarah. I have the best job in the world, and that is I get to celebrate all that we've accomplished in this short time together this evening. And I also have the chance to thank the people who made this possible. First of all, BMO, who for 15 years has been our event sponsor for opening night. Now this year, Manishtana, how is this night different than all other nights? How is this year different than all other years? BMO got even more generous. When we called them and told them about the challenges facing the Jewish community, they added another $25,000 in to support our Community Recovery Fund. We are immensely grateful for everything that they have done. I want to thank our leadership. I want to thank Jonathan and Alex and Risa and Shauna and Sue and Lana. I want to thank our campaign cabinet who have done such an immensely powerful job up until now, and we are just getting started. These are extraordinary volunteer leaders because of their commitment to our community. I want to thank our incredible campaign team at Jewish Federation. I have to say, one of the greatest gifts of being the CEO of Jewish Federation is getting to work with an extraordinary group of professionals who care so deeply for our community. And nothing has been more powerful than seeing them navigate this crisis with us side by side. You should be proud. The impact of COVID-19 poses an existential threat to the vitality of our community. You don't have to look any farther than how people are even dealing with life cycles today, around life, birth, death, milestone birthdays. If you remember in my Shabbat message recently, I talked about my own milestone birthday. But I want to talk for 1 second about something a little bit deeply more personal to me. My Zaidi, Rabbi Sidney Shankin, is going through significant health problems at 98 years old in Florida. I want nothing more than to be able to be by his side, holding his hand. He is our patriarch. I feel what you are feeling, having to be at such a distance. And I understand the challenges that people must be feeling today. Our frontline agencies have seen demand for their services skyrocket. More members of our community are seeking help than ever before, and our circle of care is enlarged greater than we have ever seen in recent memory. And some of our very agencies that make our community so vibrant are having challenges maintaining their services. You can change that. This is our time to step up however we can. Our community needs you more than ever. You can. To increase your gift to the annual campaign would be fantastic. If you can make a one-time gift to our Community Recovery Campaign, please do it. We know it is a lot to ask, and we would not be doing so if the needs had not increased so dramatically this year. When your canvasser calls, answer the call. Make it easy. Make your gift right away. If you aren't usually canvassed, go to jewishvancouver.com/donate and make a secure online donation right this moment. You'll be changing thousands of lives across our community, in our partnership region in Israel, and in Jewish communities in need around the world. Before we go, we want to leave you with a compelling message from one of our most passionate supporters and the campaign chair who led our community through the 2006 Lebanon crisis, Craig Diamond. Thank you, and good night.
It's really different this time because it's not only the regular funds that are required, but it's over and above to take away the hurt. And you feel it in your bones. And you know deep inside people need help. Guys, this is different. We got to shake you. Believe us, this is different. We need to ensure the viability of these agencies. And we need to do it now. We don't have time. We don't have time.